Good morning and welcome to our webinar from the National Clearinghouse on Abuse in Later Life, commemorating Domestic Violence Awareness Month, centering survivors in your work. I'm Lisa Furr, and I'm joined with my colleague Juanita Davis, and we'll begin by introducing ourselves. Juanita, do you want to start?
Sure. Can you hear me, Lisa?
Yes. Go ahead.
Hi there. Hi. Good morning and good afternoon to a few folks. My name is Juanita Davis, and I'm the Associate Director of the National Clearinghouse on Abuse in Later Life, also known as Ncall or Ncall. We are a proud project of End Domestic Abuse Wisconsin, the Wisconsin statewide coalition against domestic violence. I've been working at End Domestic Abuse Wisconsin since 2014. My background's in education. But I have been with the coalition since I've been with the coalition since 2014. I started out as a family law attorney working with older victims, with victims in their family law cases. I moved on and transitioned into doing outreach coordination for the coalition, and then on to doing the program management work at Ncall. My current capacity is I support and implement our national work as a TA provider for the Abuse in Later Life grant program and for the Resource Center, and I also oversee our work in partnership with the OVC-funded National Resource Center on Reaching Victims. I'm excited to talk with you all today about our phenomenal work. I'm excited to commemorate Domestic Violence Awareness Month 2019 and to talk to you about older survivors and the resources and supports that are available to you as from Ncall as a technical assistance provider for folks throughout the country on this issue. Thanks so much, Lisa. Looking forward to this webinar.
Thanks, Juanita. And again, my name is Lisa Furr. I'm based in Richmond, Virginia. I'm the program manager with Ncall, and I have been doing this work in abuse in later life for about 15 or more years, and been with Ncall for the last 2. Been a consultant with Ncall prior to that for about 8 or 10 years, and the work that I primarily do is working with the Office of Violence Against Women Abuse in Later Life grantees that will talk to you a little bit more about that grant program later on in the webinar. So we're really excited to go ahead and get started. Want to start with the acknowledgement of the work from the Department of Justice and the Office of Violence Against Women. Any of you that have done federal grants know that we are always grateful to the Office of Violence Against Women for funding us in this work and for the work that they do in assisting us with that and for hosting this webinar. So as Juanita mentioned, we're the National Clearinghouse on Abuse in Later Life, and we're committed to creating a world that respects the dignity of older adults and enhances the safety and quality of life of older victims and survivors of abuse. We do that by engaging communities to foster a collaborative, inclusive, survivor-centered response to abuse in later life, and we're grateful for the grantees who join us in doing that, some of whom are on the call, and we're excited to bring this information to you. So let's start with talking a little bit about abuse in later life. It's the nexus between domestic violence, sexual violence, and elder abuse. So if you think of that Venn diagram, those circles that are interconnecting of where the domestic sexual violence and elder abuse come together is how we define abuse in later life. So what we're going to do today for our webinar is we're going to look at Domestic Violence Awareness Month 2019. We're going to talk about why to focus on older survivors. We're going to talk about how Ncall can support you and your community in your work. We're going to give you more resources that we have that are available to you, and we'll do some closing and give you an opportunity to ask some questions in the chat box. If you do have questions or some difficulty in getting some information, or if you want to reach out to us, you can do that in that chat box, as Anna told you earlier. So let's begin by looking at who's on the call. Juanita?
Yes. Thank you, Lisa. So before we get into the content for today, we'd like to do a few brief surveys, like Lisa said, of who is on the webinar with us. So if folks could use the polling box that's popped up on your screen to share in this first survey your background, your discipline, or your professional sort of background. We are understanding that these categories are both broad and limited at the same time, but we do want to see sort of who's on the call with us today, and give folks an opportunity. If you don't see your category quite there, you don't see something that fits, please use the other button and then enter your specific information that you are willing to share in the chat box on the right of your screen. It looks like folks have had an opportunity to fill out that information. It looks like we have many people who are domestic or sexual violence advocates, some folks who are systems-based advocates, attorneys, aging services, as well as other TA providers, and a few others, one person from a tribal DV coalition. It's great to see this wonderful mix of folks in the room, so thank you all for being here today. We're going to go ahead and open up our second poll. Let's move on to our next poll at this point. This one is talking a little bit more about your experience that you have working with sort of older survivors in your field. So for those of you willing to share, can you please tell us if you have somewhere less than 5 years of experience serving older survivors, or anyone with 6 to 20 years of experience, or even 21 years plus for some folks? And again, it looks like we have a nice range of folks moving through this webinar with us. About half of you have a little less than 5 years, a little bit less than half now, a little more than a quarter of you here and there with 6 to 20 years and over 21 years of experience. And regardless of where you fall in the spectrum, we want to both thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today and commemorate Domestic Violence Awareness Month, as well as for your lending your expertise and experience to your communities at the local level, helping to enhance the safety and quality of life of older survivors. So thank you all for that work that you're doing. That's great. Let's go ahead and move on to our third poll. Wonderful range of experience here. So our final poll here. We would like to have some insight for the folks who are on the call, whether in the last year you have worked with older survivors who are within these age ranges, 50 to 60 years old, 61 to 70, 71 to 80, 81 to 90, and then 90 years plus. And you, I believe, can fill out more than one box here in this poll, so feel free to check multiple boxes. And I want to acknowledge that there are more folks who have said that they're from tribal courts, as well as CPS and elder abuse investigators. I want to welcome you both to the call. And it looks like folks have had a range of experiences with older survivors from different age categories, so that's wonderful. Many of you have worked with folks who are up to 60 years old, many up to 70, as well as 80 years old, and then it keeps going into 90 and 90 plus, which is awesome as well. So I do want to acknowledge, again, regardless of where you fall on the spectrum, Lisa's going to talk to you a little bit more later about why it's important to focus on older survivors and their experiences and their background and their centering their voices. I'm going to acknowledge just right away that as we learn more about the aging trends within our country, that we know that if you're not already working with older survivors in your work, in those various disciplines and backgrounds, you certainly will as we continue to age into this population broadly as a society and as a demographic. We are simply an aging country, and older survivors are in need of the supports and services that you all can provide. We encourage you to connect with Ncall and with our work and with the work that's being done throughout the elder abuse and abuse in later life field, so you can get the support that you need. So Lisa, I'll go ahead, I'll move us forward. If we can close our last poll out, that would be great. I want to acknowledge, as Lisa mentioned, I'm going to move our slides forward. that we are here to commemorate Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I'll start by acknowledging that Domestic Violence Awareness Month has evolved, as many of you all may know, from the original Day of Unity that was held in October of 1981. This day was conceived by the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, also known as NCADV. And the intent of Domestic Violence Awareness Month was at the time and is now to connect advocates across the nation who are working to end violence against women and their children. The Day of Unity became an entire week after a few years that was devoted to a range of activities that were conducted at the local, state, and national level. Those activities were conducted were varied and they were diverse, but they had very common themes, including mourning those who have died as a result of domestic violence, as well as celebrating the survivors of domestic violence, and connecting those who were working on this issue to both survivors and the victims' stories and to each other, so that we could create a world that was safer and more able to address the issues that arose as a result of domestic violence in the lives of victims and survivors. And our goal at Ncall is certainly to center in that conversation and dialogue around Domestic Violence Awareness Month, is to center the voices and the experiences of older survivors during the month and throughout the year in all facets of our work nationally and at the local and community level. So we're hoping to support you all and connect you all to survivors and advocates and to our work so that we can work together to end violence, not only against women and children, against all survivors. So I want to encourage you all to, if you want more information about Domestic Violence Awareness Month, to head to the NCADV and the NCRDV, which is the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence website, and click on their DVAM pages for more information. And I'll hand it back to Lisa to talk to you now a little bit more about why it's important to focus on older survivors. Lisa?
Thanks, Juanita. So, excuse me, what we're looking at with older survivors is that we talk about the baby boomers turning 60 and 65, and what we're looking at is about 10,000 Americans turn 65 every day. And as we know, Office of Violence Against Women serves folks more than just women, but we began our work there, and so I want to acknowledge that older women comprise more than half of that adult population over 65. And so what we're looking at is the population that we have in domestic and sexual violence communities that we, agencies that we've been serving, that population is aging. So one of the things that we need to look at and think about in our work is that racial and ethnic minority populations have increased 5.7 million in 2000, and about 16% of the elderly population defines as a racial or ethnic minority, and that's up from to 8.5 million in 2011. So that's quite a jump. What we're looking at is that there'll be an additional jump by 2030, which is just 10 years from now. It's hard to imagine. But one of the things that is important for us to think about as we're thinking of racial and ethnic minorities and minority populations, those underserved populations that we often talk about in the work with Office of Violence Against Women and in our communities, that if we're lucky, all of those minority groups will be part of the aging population. So it's important that our work reflect not only older adults, but that they reflect the older adults who actually live in our communities. The important thing to think about when we're discussing older adults who are experiencing elder abuse, oftentimes the myth is that all those things happen in those facilities. And the reality is that 1 in 10 older adults residing in the community are experiencing elder abuse in the past year, and that those numbers are not inclusive of facilities, but rather these are folks who in their communities are experiencing in their homes or in the homes of their loved ones. And what we know in working in abuse in later life and working in elder abuse, domestic and sexual violence, is that oftentimes it's those who are in that element of that relationship of trust, that committed ongoing caring relationship that are often the abusers in these situations. And it's important for us to keep that in mind when we're hearing about things happening in facilities, that more often than not, the folks we're seeing are the people in their own homes. So as I said earlier, about 2/3 of elder abuse victims are women. And of course, we serve men, we serve folks of all genders, and folks who identify as transgender or whose gender is nonconforming. And what we're aware of is that that abuse in later life, domestic and sexual violence, crosses all the genders. But we just want to acknowledge that 2/3 of the elder abuse victims that are seen are women. And this, of course, is from that lifespan of Rochester, Greater Rochester study that was done in 2011. One of the things that it's important for us to realize, and I think that those of us in this field are not going to be surprised by the information that for every one case of abuse in later life, every one case of elder abuse that comes to the attention, another 24 cases are never reported in any way. And so what we're thinking about is that this is just the tip of the iceberg. These are small numbers in relationship to some other abuses that we may see, but what we know is that based on these studies is that these are all underreported situations, and it's important for us to get the word out about the work that we do so that more folks in our communities will know that we are a resource for them. So as I said, violence against women is largely unaddressed because it exists in the margins of those two fields of domestic violence and elder abuse. It's good to see some adult protective services folks here on the call and some folks in the aging services field. So it is one of those things that requires us to work with our colleagues to address this issue. And again, as the numbers have indicated, when we've done a look at abuse in later life that has been reported through emergency rooms, those numbers also have increased. What we're looking at from 2002 to 2016, the estimated non-fatal assault rate of men over 60 increased by 75%. For women, it increased by 35% from 2007 to 2016. And for men 60 to 69 years old, from the 6 years from 2010 to 2016, the homicide rate increased by 19%. So we are seeing consistently in our communities that the violence experienced by older adults is on the rise. So the thing that we need to look at in addition is that older victims, older adults in our communities, experience unique barriers that prevent them from seeking help and that further complicate the process of addressing abuse once it has been reported. There are many barriers that are available to them, that are many barriers that prevent them from accessing the services. First and foremost, not knowing what services are available, not having an understanding of what they're experiencing is abuse, and may be classified as such by, excuse me, classified as such by the community that they're living in, and not knowing how to address that. The other issue that we're looking at in terms of barriers is the very real issue of not wanting the perpetrator, if the perpetrator is someone that they're in a relationship with, not wanting that perpetrator to experience additional harm by being involved in some of the systems in terms of, for example, if the perpetrator is an adult child, not wanting that child to face prison or arrest if that is, if they're reported or if they reach out for services. The other thing that we look at, I talked about that the minority populations, the underserved populations that we often talk about in our field are aging, and that we hope that our work reflects those in our community. The reality is that that a lack of services that are culturally appropriate can impede service and increase vulnerability to abuse for older adults from those cultures. So it's important that we reach out to agencies from those populations that are doing the work in their community to see how we can assist, how we can work together. It's not that we're asking you to be all for all, but to educate yourselves about the populations of the folks in your communities so that your services aren't an additional barrier for them to getting assistance, but rather that we can reach out with the help of those individuals to get them services and to make those services culturally appropriate for those individuals. So let's talk a little bit about National Clearinghouse on Abuse in Later Life and how we can support your work. First of all, we have a resource center that you can access by going to our website, which is ncall.us. We offer training, technical assistance, and consultation on that. One of the things that we do, we're the technical assistance provider for the Abuse in Later Life grant from the Office of Violence Against Women, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. But we also provide technical assistance to other technical assistance providers who are realizing that some of the folks they're working with are doing work with older survivors, but also the general population, those in the field of elder abuse, domestic and sexual violence, and stalking, who are finding out that the work they're doing could be assisted by additional opportunities. So we provide resources and information, and there's a number of things that you can find on our website. We're going to talk a little bit more about our resources. I'll just do a quick little plug that I'm sure Juanita will talk about in a little bit about the videos that are up on our website that you can download and use for training for with your community, but also with your staff as a means of talking about this issue and how you would respond to various things. So we have not only survivor stories available for that, but also allied professionals talking about their work on that website as well. So let me talk a little bit about the Abuse in Later Life program. I see at least 4 or 5 or so grantees that are on the call. We are lucky to be able to work with around 8 to 9 communities a year, and there are 3 foci of the grant program to address abuse in later life by providing training and cross-training, and that training and cross-training is for prosecutors, law enforcement, direct service folks, judges. Did I get them all? I think I got them all. And then we're looking at creating or enhancing the coordinated community response, doing that systematic work to ensure that that the complex nature of this issue that cannot be done by any one agency, that we're working with the other agencies who also have an opportunity to address this issue in the community. So for the purposes of this grant, the minimum of the folks involved in that work are a domestic or sexual violence agency, law enforcement agency, a prosecutor agency, and an aging services agency or an adult protective services type agency in that community as well. Also developing victim services. Judy jumped in to share that, yes, the direct service folks get training as well. And so that's one of the trainings that the grant does for aging service providers and domestic and sexual violence folks who are doing direct service with folks in later life. The other aspect of this grant is we look at about 1/3 of the funds that the community receives should be directed towards direct victim services in that community, and there's a process that is gone through for obtaining, doing a needs assessment, and then designing the services based on what's going on in your community. And the grant has grown and changed so that, as I said, 1/3 of the funds that are received are earmarked for those victim services directly. So folks that are eligible to apply, nice big list, states and territories, Indian tribal governments, tribal organizations, units of local government, nonprofit, non-governmental victim services organizations with a demonstrated experience in assisting older adult women, elderly women, or demonstrated experience in addressing sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, stalking. So that might be a statewide coalition. It might be the Adult Protective Services. It might be the local domestic and sexual violence agency. It could also be the area agency on aging. We've also had law enforcement be part of the group that receives the grant as well. Here's a snapshot of some of the communities that have received this grant. We've yet to add in the new folks that received it this past year, and so we'll be updating that at, we just learned who those were. Those letters went out this week, I believe, this October. So we welcome a new fiscal year 19 grantee community to our work. Some of the other things that we do that that can enhance services to older survivors that you can access, we have some webinars or PowerPoints that are available on our website that you can download and reach out to. We work with communities to address some of the civil legal system issues and do some webinars for some of those lawyers who are addressing that. And the webinar for civil attorneys is accessible for you on your website. We work with a consultant from Red Wind Consulting to address work within the tribal communities, and also that PowerPoint is available for you on our website as well. So again, the website is ncall.us, and so you can go and download a number of different types of trainings and PowerPoints and resources from that. Transitional and emergency housing, we're working with individuals to start looking at accessibility, at availability, at what is available and what is around in your community, and does it meet the needs? The domestic and sexual violence field has looked at rapid rehousing. It's looked at any number of transitional types of solutions for older adults, and this is one of the things that we want folks to talk about in terms of are the housing issues that exist in your community, are they thinking about abuse in later life and what the needs are of those survivors who also need some housing options as well. Benefits, we talk with some of the state and city or county folks around what is and isn't available from folks in the age bracket that this grant serves. The one difficulty that is a reality is that the grant begins looking at older adults at age 50 or older. And at age 50, some of the benefits that are available to folks from an age bracket that might be served by Adult Protective Services are not available to some of the younger folks who might be experiencing abuse in later life. And so we need a conversation going in local communities around what benefits are available to the folks that are maybe too old for TANF, the funds for families, mothers with children, single parents with children, and some of the Social Security or some of the other benefits that might be available at 65 and above. So we're having a conversation in communities about what's available for that bracket that often is between those two federal programs and how that goes. Juanita, did you want to jump in and share anything else?
Hey, Lisa, I thought you did a wonderful job with all of this, and I just want to echo much of what you've already said with regard to enhancing services to older survivors in your work. I do want to just mention, like Lisa, like as you mentioned, that resources and support that we have around understanding the needs of older survivors related to civil legal processes and remedies, whether it's restraining orders or understanding the dynamics of supporting and representing older survivors in your work in the context of civil legal work, or understanding with regard to transitional and emergency housing issues of accessibility and uniquely tailored, and the need for uniquely tailored physical spaces or housing support timelines that might more effectively address how folks have walked, may have left the economy of work at some point, or the benefits. I thought, Lisa, you did a wonderful job with that as well, understanding tribal communities as well, and the unique needs of tribal elders around the nexus of age and sociocultural concerns and context, and the remedies related to abuse. You can receive services and supports not only from Ncall around those things, but if you just I think, for me, highlighting the fact that those centering the voices of older survivors requires you to, it demands that view and that look into these issues, so to make sure that you're effectively and efficiently and holistically considering the panoply of concerns that an older survivor may have, and that certainly this list is not exhaustive, but it's one that we hope allows you to think through what some of those things might be that you can consider as we move into talking not only about what more you can do and how we can support you, but how you can take this work back to your community and enhance the experiences that older survivors have. So not much to add, but just letting you all sort of think about it, to let it breathe a little bit in terms of what you could be doing or considering when you're working with older survivors. So I'll go ahead, Lisa, if it works for you, and move us into the next slide, unless you had more.
Nope.
All right, so folks, in addition to the many resources that Lisa has already spoken about and eligibility that many of you have, if you're not already grantees, to apply for the Abuse in Later Life Grant Program. I do want to quickly highlight the National Resource Center for Reaching Victims. This is call it NRC for short. The NRC is a one-stop shop for victim services providers, culture-specific organizations, criminal justice systems professionals, and policymakers to get information and expert guidance on ways they can enhance their capacity to identify, reach, and serve all victims, but especially those from communities that are underrepresented with relationship to healing services and avenues to accessing just outcomes. The National Resource Center is funded by the Office on Victims of Crime. Ncall is the lead partner on older victims for this National Resource Center, and we just really aim through this work to transform the way that victim services look at the local level and to provide, culturally and linguistically specific, trauma-informed, and accessible services for these communities that are underserved. If you want more information about the training and technical assistance and the consultation that can be provided by the National Resource Center, you can reach Ncall and the center through their website, www.reachingvictims.org. I will just let folks know that in addition to older survivors, this center does focus on victims who have limited English proficiency, victims who are immigrants from immigrant and refugee communities, communities of color, folks who are LGBTQ, IA+, as well as people with disabilities, folks who are formerly incarcerated, who are victims as well, and others who are considered to be, quote, sort of historically marginalized. We encourage you to take a look at that website, but you can also email us, you can call us, you can, give us a call. We'll have our contact information at the end of the webinar for you to consider as well. In addition to the resources that we've listed already, the support that you can get through the grant program, the OVC funded work, and through our work as a National Resource Center for Abuse in Later Life, we also have a number of resources that we have developed, again, on our website to support you as you work with older survivors. The first I'll note is the Lifting Up Voices resources. I'll call it maybe a packet at this point. In 2018-2019, Ncall worked with Terra Nova Films, a wonderful video production company that comes from Chicago, Illinois, and many other subject matter experts in the field. We worked with them to create a series of videos featuring the voices of older survivors, telling their stories with abuse and exploitation. And the video project is absolutely powerful, and the stories are absolutely riveting. On June 5th of this year, the Ncall and the National Center on Elder Abuse, as well as Terra Nova Films, hosted a World Elder Abuse Awareness Day webinar, which featured the premiere showing of many of these videos. And they're all in draft form at this point because we're going through the evaluation process, but those videos are a great resource to take a look at. Again, we call it the Lifting Up Voices of Older Survivors, or LOVE video project. These videos were funded by OVC. It covers, the clips cover the lived experience of these older survivors of domestic violence, sexual violence, stalking, financial exploitation, revealing, their heart and their incredible strength, as well as talking with some of the service providers who supported these older survivors as they were moving through these issues of abuse and exploitation, and through the justice system and the various systems that they needed to go through to navigate their experiences and to hold their offenders accountable. The webinar also explored how the theme of lifting up voices and other initiatives can raise awareness about older survivors throughout the country. And we did a feature and action guide along that theme, which our hope is that it helps folks at the local level and the community level to increase their awareness and engagement. And if you missed the webinar and you'd like to see it, you can now stream a recording of the webinar and download the materials right on our website. Just phenomenal as a resource. I just want to really highlight that. And we have a number of resources. We have a video library that I'll talk to you about in a little bit, but many things that you can access that way, if not on the phone or in person. Through our website as well, you can access an array of resources and infographics and graphics and tools to extend your awareness and outreach efforts as relates to Domestic Violence Awareness Month and many other awareness months. Ncall, as a resource center, creates these tools to assist you all in your communities and you all as professionals, again, to increase awareness of the issue of abuse in later life and older survivors. We have posters, like I said, web graphics. We do this for World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, National Stalking Awareness Month in January, as well as Stalking Awareness Month in April. Sorry, let me just go back and say World Elder Abuse Awareness Month, obviously being on June 15th. And you can access that using our graphics library if you are interested, and you can individualize and make specific to your community all of the resources that are available on our website. In our publications library, which is one other sort of subpage on our website, you can access a number of written resources, a number of toolkits, articles, publications, and much more, all created for the most part by Ncall staff and through collaboration with various organizations and individuals in the field, elder abuse and abuse in later life. These resources cover a broad array, a plethora of topics, including, but are not limited to, abuse in later life and elder abuse, collaboration and coordinated community response, issues of confidentiality and mandatory reporting, again, domestic sexual violence, stalking in later life, emergency shelter and transitional housing, many of the things that are really critical to expanding our capacity to work effectively with older survivors, not only as a TA provider, as other TA providers, but also you all in the room as advocates in various systems and with various professional backgrounds as trainers and different capacities in your work as well. The publication library also includes one resource that we hope to highlight here for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and that's the Working with Older Survivors of Abuse Toolkit. In 2016, Ncall created this toolkit that you see here. It's about, I think, about 50 pages or so, working with older survivors. There's a summary report involved in the toolkit, which describes 7 different guiding principles with that we use under the acronym the acronym of RESPECT, which have with each guiding principle, which is an ideal or a concept that allows you all to make a broad frame around how you're doing work in your communities and in your agencies and organizations. Those principles each have minimum guidelines and practical strategies for advocates and programs to consider when they're thinking about creating or enhancing their services to better meet the needs of older survivors. So hopefully the idea is that if you implement the strategies that you'll be able to meet the minimum guidelines that will ultimately embody and embrace those guiding principles. In addition to just the toolkit itself, there are hyperlinks included within the guiding principles document that link you to 34 different videos and segments of experts within the field, subject matter experts, discussing the key content, and that's interspersed throughout the document. And you can download the resource with caption videos, or you can download the resource with visually described videos, as well as just download the resource as a PDF, obviously without the videos included. Also included in the toolkit, in addition to the summary report, is a self-assessment workbook and some resource lists and some training modules, or some modules that are included for folks to consider. And at least I think you were talking about the Abuse in Later Life Education Series, and I know that we don't have a slide for that, but I'll pause right here to mention that Abuse in Later Life Education Series. So taking a step back from being an advocate or being somebody who might be interested in working and creating and enhancing protocols and procedures for working with older survivors, if folks are just looking to onboard volunteers or to learn more themselves about what the issue of abuse in later life is about, what elder abuse is, and how that intertwines with your work and how you can go about creating schemas so you understand the concepts and understand what's happening to older survivors, we do have an Abuse in Later Life Education series of videos. I think there's 13, maybe more videos that are anywhere from 5 minutes to maybe 20 to 25 minutes, but the vast majority being right around 15 minutes long. Videos of folks just saying, what is abuse in later life? It's a pre-recorded PowerPoint, so it kind of looks like maybe a webinar, what have you. You can download it at any time and just train yourself and learn more, and others to learn about these issues conceptually, and then about sort of a very sort of basic 1.0 about what to do about the issue in your local community. So the range of topics includes, intimate partner violence, sexual violence, exploitation, neglect, stalking, all of those things that you would consider to be issues related to older victims, and then issues tertiary to that, or related to that, equity, considering equity in your work, understanding how policies and procedures can affect your ability to provide effective services. I encourage you, if you're interested, to take a look at that education series, which is available on our website as a training tool. In addition to the Working with Older Survivors toolkits, we also have a rural toolkit for domestic and sexual violence program advocates, many of you on this call. It's really detailing those issues that are unique to serving survivors in rural communities, anything from issues related to sort of staffing to technology to geography that would be barriers to, for older survivors seeking services are all addressed in this toolkit, and as well as you're provided with some in-depth suggestions and tips and tools and strategies for working effectively in that context. Similarly, we have a set of toolkits that Lisa worked on with us as a consultant, and how we can say as a staff person that we use out in the community. It's called the sort of partnering to address faith and safety, as well as the Where Safety and Faith Meet sort of toolkit. We call it for short the FAITH toolkit. Both of these documents have information for faith communities and faith leaders around elder abuse and how to help in terms of responding, like a guide for these providers in that context, as well as DV and sexual violence providers assisting older survivors of abuse who are faith affiliated or faith as part of their support and their network in terms of how they would like to address and deal with, or how issues of abuse may come up in their lived experience. So again, we encourage you to take a look at our website to find that information. Also on our website, we have a beautiful series, I think about 6 or 7 of these information sheets. All of these, broadly, they offer an overview of abuse in later life, as well as the dynamics and forms of abuse. Some tips on how to respond to abuse cases if you are working with older survivors, or it becomes a part of the revelation. And it covers many of the challenges that can arise when working with older victims, and discusses the importance of using a victim-centered approach when working with older victims. And last, the sheets discuss the benefits, as Lisa has mentioned, of engaging community partners to address abuse in later life, and it provides a list of resources related to the issue that you can consider in your work. And I do just want to plug that collaboration piece. I know that we've talked about that probably ad nauseum at this point, but collaboration, obviously, on these very complex cases is a critical part of the success that you will have in addressing the unique and complex needs for older victims. And then, one last resource I want to share, that's a written resource. The Elder Justice Roadmap Report was created in 2014. This report identifies and prioritizes actions that direct services providers such as yourself, educators, researchers, the entire elder abuse field, the resources, the actions they can take to help older adults who are facing abuse, neglect, and exploitation. It provides essentially a roadmap for strategic investment in engagement by policymakers in both the private and public sectors. And we hope, an affirmation that we can, in fact, advance our collective efforts to prevent and combat elder abuse at various levels. So this is a really phenomenal document. Ncall contributed to it, and we helped to create the final draft. I encourage folks who are looking for sort of maybe a higher level, sort of national look into the issue of elder abuse specifically, to take a look at this document to understand the directions that the field is going around this really complex and challenging issue. So the last thing I want to say before we close, open the venue up for any questions or comments you all have about Domestic Violence Awareness Month as relates to older survivors, is that Ncall is available. We are an online. We are part of the social media zeitgeist, if you will. We have beyond our website, we have a Facebook account. We also have Twitter, where we send out information about, again, resources, upcoming events, things that are happening around elder abuse and the abuse in later life field. You can join us. Not join us. You can like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter. You can visit our YouTube website where you can find many of the videos that we have on our website available on YouTube. And I think there might be conversely downloadable if they're not available on one side or the other, visually described. All of them are captioned, so you can just access us that way. We also have an e-newsletter that comes out roughly quarterly, if not monthly at this point, with information about older survivors and abuse in later life. It'll be from the field, from the work that Ncall is doing, as well as an announcement or two about our opportunities, things that are going on that we think that are important to share with our audiences. So I want to pause there and both, thank you all for your time on this webinar today, and Lisa and the folks at NCJ, FCJ, and others for the opportunity to be here to talk to you about Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And as we close out our webinar, I want to open up the chat box for any final questions or comments or things that you all you want to know about the resources, the many resources and support that we have shared about the Abuse in Later Life Grant Program. We are a national technical assistance provider, so at any time, either as an advocate or a program or as another TA provider, you want information, you want consultation or ways in which we can support you. We are there for everyone in the field, and I think the message that we want to bring to you from that OVW-funded work is that not only can we help you and support you in that effort, but we as a national TA provider have that opportunity to work with other TA providers to ensure that you get the information you need to do your work successfully. So I'll go ahead and open up this final sort of chat box. Lots of thank yous from folks around this issue, around the webinar. But if you have questions for us around Domestic Violence Awareness Month, specifically what you can do to, I know we're midway through the month, but what you can do or what we can do to support you, go ahead and do that. And Lisa, if you had anything you wanted to add, please let me know.
Now, as we wait to see if anyone has any questions in the chat box, let me just go ahead and move we'll continue to take questions and comments for a little while, but to go ahead and put up where you can reach us at Ncall, our website, and an email address.
And while we're waiting, Lisa, I just wanted to say one thing. I know you probably mentioned it before, but I do want to emphasize that if you're thinking about or considering the Abuse in Later Life Grant Program as something where you would want to know more information and potentially apply for the opportunity, not only can you reach out to Lisa, our program manager. She's phenomenal. She oversees our work, and she can provide you all kinds of information on the program. But I do want to just quickly detail that if you're a statewide coalition, like in Domestic Abuse Wisconsin, you can actually apply for this program as well, and we do encourage that to happen in the future. But again, if you're interested in getting more information, please reach out to us at our website at this information, or directly. Lisa has put her email in the chat box for everyone to have access to. And I don't think we're seeing too many questions from folks. We must have just covered it all precisely, Lisa. I do want to thank the folks who are thanking us and thank everyone here for the opportunity to be with you all today, and wish you thank you for commemorating Domestic Violence Awareness Month with us today. Head to our website. We have lots of resources on DVAM. We have a lot of resources for other awareness months and activities. We thank you so much for your time today, and I'll let you close us out, Lisa.
Yes, I just wanted to echo Juanita's thanks. Thanks for the work that you do in your community, and encourage you to reach out to others in your community who are also struggling to do this work, and to keep the voices of older adults centered as we strive to make our communities safer for those individuals. Again, thank you so much. We had around 50 folks participating on this, and I appreciate the work that you're doing. Again, I wish you the the best as we commemorate Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and hope that any events that you're doing this year are successful and reach the people in your community who are needing to hear about the work that you're doing. And we thank you for the work and look forward to hearing from you, seeing you on our website, and providing you with the resources that you need to do this work in your locality. Again, thanks so much for being on, and I'll turn it back over to Anna if there's anything else. You've got the slides that you can download for that, and Anna, any additional information for folks as we close out?
An evaluation. You will be prompted to fill out an evaluation once the webinar is over.
Okay, well, thank you all so much, and I appreciate it. Thanks for spending an hour with us, and we hope to hear from you soon. Juanita, thank you, and on behalf of Ncall, thanks to NCJFCJ for your work on that, and for OVW for providing us the opportunity to come together with you and talk about this vital issue. Thanks again, and everyone have a good day.
Bye-bye.